We've all heard of tummy tucks and BBLs, but would you break your down here? Thank you. Very unprofessional, Phil. We've all heard of tummy tucks and BBLs, but would you break your legs in the pursuit of what you consider to be the perfect body? Recently, a friend sent me an article about short men who are going to great lengths to be tall, and I have to tell you, since reading that article, I've been on a bit of a metaphorical journey. I really mean that, and so much so that I thought I'd make a whole video about it, even knowing that there are videos about this already out there, including some from a few doctors, because this is a different take. I want to talk to you not only about leg lengthening operations, but about the commodification of major surgery and shopping for a new body online.
Hello, I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish I was a ceiling insulation installer. I wish I had a femur with a crack like that and was 80 grand poorer. I wish my legs were like 10 foot high. Girls would think I'm fine. They'd say I love your ratio. Do you want fellatio? I wanna have surgery cause the world's hurt me. Ignored, looked down on. They see me with a frown on. I wanna be a kaiju. Then I get a waifu. Cause say they want a tall guy. They don't want a small guy. That's why they all swipe left and I'm left feeling bereft. But maybe there's a solution. I crave absolution. Now I'm Lilliputian, but there's a revolution. I'm gonna get my legs broke. My height'll be bespoke. I ain't no Roman Roy. Man's gonna be top boy. I'm gonna grow my bones so I won't be forever alone.
Now, I had heard about the surgical operation in question before, in the context of pathologically small children, perhaps affected by some forms of dwarfism, or to correct leg length discrepancy, but I had no idea it had become an easily accessible option for adults, and one that is growing in popularity remarkably quickly, assisted, of course, by the internet. From a niche procedure a few years ago, many of the major medical centers in the US now offer it. One surgeon in California said he performed 50 in the last year, up from 20 just 3 years earlier. In short, men are deliberately breaking their femurs, the thigh bones, and sometimes even the bones of the lower legs too, the tibia and fibula, which I've always thought should have been called the tibula and fibula, and over the course of many months are slowly and painfully elongating their legs using a special device. Now don't worry, I'm not going to show you any gory surgery because that always leads to my videos being demonetized, so if you really want to see some technical aspects of the surgery, check out videos from my colleagues at the Hospital of YouTube, Antonio Webb and Chris Rayner, both of whom are actually orthopedic surgeons, the kinds of doctors that would do this operation. And if you really want to go into depth, there's a great channel called Cyborg for Life run by a guy called Victor, who had the operation himself and covers lots of aspects.
This is still a matter of the height.
So I can wear lifts?
Even with lifts, you're not that tall.
So what? No, we never discussed that.
Oh. I thought you were serious, Vincent.
I am serious. I'm not doing that. I won't do that.
I quite like the backstory to this because Soviet-era medicine is a bit of an area of interest of mine, and the apparatus that allows the procedure was invented by a guy called Gavril Ilizarov, a Jewish Azerbaijani doctor who achieved amazing things in spite of being repeatedly attacked by the Soviet regime, and developed his apparatus to treat injured soldiers in the Second World War. Now, over the years, the technology has obviously advanced to become less like a medieval torture device, but if you are one of the growing numbers of medical tourists to India or Turkey who advertise heavily online with prices perhaps a quarter of what is charged in the UK or the US, where leg lengthening can go north of $100,000, you might still find an old-fashioned Ilizarov frame being used. I started reading the article. The guy they were profiling as he went through the process, called John, ended up 6 foot. That's a great height. I wonder what he started at. I assumed most men going for this would have been really short. Well, he started at 5'8". I mean, that's taller than me, and I can honestly say I've never been bothered by my height, so now I was intrigued. How come he was so unhappy with his quite normal height? Maybe he was some young guy with low self-esteem caused by a lack of romantic success? Well, actually, he was around 40 years old, he was married with kids, and the journalist said he was a normal, likeable guy. Our lives actually sounded pretty similar. Well, maybe not the normal, likeable bit, and while I have never been even so much as tempted to wear lifts in my shoes, Clearly, he had been so scarred through his life, or felt so insecure about his height, that he felt that this was something he needed to do. I was fascinated, and I read on. I think we're all familiar with the lengths that people are willing to go to change their appearance. And with the exception of a few minutes of being sorely tempted when a Turkish hair transplant clinic offered me £50,000 to go out there and make a video where I get a hair transplant. You know, I've just said that out loud and I've realised something, this isn't in the script, that £50,000 was the exact cost of leg lengthening surgery in one place that I saw. So I've just realised that I could have got a new hairline and a new height effectively for free. And all I would have had to have sacrificed would have been the trust of my audience for promoting a medical procedure. Well, no, that's too valuable. I'd rather be short and bald and have my ethics intact. Man, I should stick to the script because that's interrupted the point that I was making, which is that I've never felt any personal connection to all the examples of body modification that we normally see in the media, like nose jobs or butt lifts and so on. I mean, obviously I don't need a butt lift. My ass is incredible. Stick to the script. And so here was what is essentially cosmetic surgery. But this time it was aimed almost exclusively at men, and I'm in the target demographic. Because you see, my friends, I am a short dude, or a short king, as I believe I'm now supposed to say, in what is quite a wholesome meme. I stand a proud 169.5 centimetres. Don't forget my 5mm. That last line's not going to be taken out of context, is it? Now, at this point in the video, I know it has become customary for me to make some cheeky comment about Americans who don't understand the metric system, but embarrassingly, the UK continues to use feet and inches for height, so I can tell you that that is about 5'7", and besides, I think it would be inaccurate of me to mock Americans in this context anyway, because I realised recently that, of course, you have integrated the metric system into children's education because I hear you're quite keen on using 9mm in schools. My reaction when I read this article was kind of bemusement. As I've mentioned, I've genuinely never cared about my height, and indeed researching this video has been the first time I've given any thought to the idea of heightism. Now granted, I'm still within one standard deviation of the mean height in the West, and worldwide I'm actually not that far off average, but here in the UK I was definitely one of the short kids at school, and I used to get teased about it, but everybody got teased about something. I mean, that's being a kid, and it's never really bothered me. Perhaps I'm just pathologically inconsiderate of anybody else's views of me. That's certainly what people seem to say. And by the way, I highly recommend that as a personality trait. But for me, the full moustache that I had by about the age of 12 caused me far more mental anguish. As a preteen, I was called the little rubber Indian man because I was small and used to have a tendency for backflips and acrobatics. But in retrospect, that was kind of racist, right? I was also going to mention how being sporty, I think, can help when you're small, but I realised that even if I mention that I was a specialist 400-metre runner, me just saying that, I think, will only end up sounding like...
I'm wasted on cross-country. We dwarves are natural sprinters. Very dangerous over short distances.
Huh. You know, you grow up thinking you're Aragorn or Legolas, but before you know it, you're Gimli. I guess there might have been some height discrimination when my German teacher wrote Smurf on my forehead with a board marker. You start your life thinking you're a young Smurf with a crush on Smurfette, but before you know it, you're Papa Smurf. Then again, my other German teacher called me a little and threw me out of almost every class. Yes, I pretty much taught myself German for GCSE, and that's why I remember nothing. Ich habe vergessen alles. Things. School, what an atmosphere of nurturing love and learning. Okay, don't worry, you don't have to be a passive spectator in my public therapy session any longer, but suffice to say, I was a small, skinny kid. The exact kind of person that seems to develop dissatisfaction with their body, and specifically their height, and ultimately would end up going for leg lengthening surgery. I've read now countless articles about this, I've watched YouTube videos profiling people undergoing it, and I just felt sorry for these guys. I saw myself in a lot of them. I struggled to understand how they could do it. This is not a quick lip filler or Botox injection. This is brutal, painful surgery with an intense 6-month or more recovery period of daily physiotherapy and having to relearn how to walk. You'd have to quit your job or take a whole year off. Why did these guys feel so upset with their height that they're willing to do this? Why didn't I feel that way? What's up with short dudes? So I did what any serious academic does when they begin research, and I went to YouTube, and I thought this video might be about heightism. And while I have appreciated learning about this whole world that I've never really looked into before, I realized I'm not a psychologist. You don't watch this channel for my expertise in the social sciences, a field that brings me out in hives and gives me a migraine. No, you watch for my medical knowledge, or perhaps because you've got a beard fetish. So I'll summarize my research into the topic of heightism in a few paragraphs. I think it's clear that heightism remains a form of discrimination hiding in plain sight. While we would balk at a dating profile that said no black girls or no fat guys, it's quite routine to see "don't message me if you are under 6 foot." The televised human zoo that is Love Island features heavily enhanced reminders to stay in school who openly mocked a 5'7" male contestant.
What, you call a man under 5'10"? A friend? No.
And for clarity, nobody need date somebody that they don't want to date, but it's not normally spelled out like that. There are some compelling data suggesting that tall men are more successful than short men. You might have heard how most high-powered CEOs are well above average height, although Bezos and Zuckerberg are both 5'8" or 171 centimeters, and they are famously extremely normal, cool guys that young men would love to emulate. But there is well-documented evidence of short people progressing through the ranks with more difficulty, with taller people seen as being more capable of leadership roles and hence being promoted and paid more. We've been able to have conversations in society about immutable characteristics like race and sex being discriminated against in the workplace, but we don't talk about attractiveness and height anywhere near as much, and height, of course, can be part of attractiveness for a lot of people. When a short guy does make it to the highest office in the land, such as British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, there are always snipes that mention his size on social media, calling him a little toe rag, a little or even saying things like he's not projecting a good image for the country because he's shorter than other world leaders, which are really unnecessary because there are more than enough reasons to criticize him for being a truly awful human being. There's the old Napoleon complex used to stereotype assertive short guys, even though Napoleon wasn't short, and the very fact that we think he was British propaganda to make him seem weaker. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of my wife's key complaints, which... No, not about me, I mean about being short. Because my shorty is a shorty, in the fine tradition of diminutive Bengali babes.
मेरा कद भले ही 5 फुट का है, लेकिन मेरी जुबान 10 फुट की है.
And while I love going to concerts and gigs, she's never really been that keen because she can't see much. And talking of relationships brings me, of course, to the most commonly cited reason that short men are unhappy with their height, which is the only thing in this video more brutal than the operation: the modern world of dating. Now, I've been with my wife for 23 years. We met when we were teenagers. So this cardiologist doesn't exactly have his finger on the pulse of the dating world. But with every article I read, with every friend that I talk to about what modern dating is like, especially dating apps, I thank my lucky stars that I haven't experienced it. Well, at least not yet. It's easy to understand why a guy struggling to get any success might opt for bits of metal drilled into his legs. I mean, more bone plates, more dates, am I right? I thought the harsh reality of dating apps was summed up in an article that I read by Olivia Reingold.
Jamal is one of a growing number of young men who are withdrawing from the dating pool. A lot of men are checking out. We're just tired. We're just tired of being told that we don't measure up either physically or financially. I found him on the online Reddit community r/true unpopular opinion, where men often vent about the dating scene. On another subreddit, r/purple pill debate, male commenters bemoan that they are held to the 666 rule.
No, not that 666 rule.
Which mandates that they be 6 feet tall, make 6 figures, and have 6 inches or more downstairs.
But it's not just unhinged hinge profiles in the West. Asia, where of course people are significantly shorter on average, has seen huge popularity for leg lengthening surgery for many years now. Vice did a piece on leg lengthening surgery in India, where the OG dating apps, arranged marriage matrimonial ads, have stripped away any personality from profiles, leaving only your biodata. Profession, salary, caste, height. And more leg lengthening surgeries were done in China than anywhere else until it was banned in 2006 after a spate of horrendous complications. I think it's interesting that men in countries like China and India, where competition is brutal for everything, especially a female romantic partner due to skewed sex ratios in some parts of the countries, are willing to correct what they see as a major disadvantage to being successful in life. So that's the long and short on the cultural problem of heightism. But you could read similar things in the myriad articles about leg lengthening that are out there. So I wanted to focus on a different aspect, from a more midlife crisis perspective. Some videos on my to-do list are so big, I feel kind of intimidated with the amount of work that would be involved. And as my time is limited, that's where they sit on my to-do list rather than my done list. And one such video is tentatively titled The Wild World of Online Plastic Surgery. And it's an overview of the truly insane world of commodified major surgery. It's just absolutely nuts. So, as I've been kind of passively researching this for a while, I follow a bunch of plastic surgery Instagram accounts. Instagram is where you can find some of the most scammy, cringy, exploitative stuff. And I don't use TikTok, but based on what I've heard from others and what I've seen even briefly, it is much, much worse there. While many doctors might use the internet to advertise for business, cosmetic surgery is in a league of its own, with its own celebrity plastic surgeons employing whole social media teams to build content and drum up business, often from far and wide. They talk about major operations like Black Friday deals. I mean, they literally offer Black Friday deals. 2 for 1 on fillers, refer a friend for a nose job and get 20% off, 30% off a Brazilian butt lift if you also buy a boob job, and most exploitative of all, a discount if you agree to have your operation and your before and after pictures used for the plastic surgeon's social media account so that they can do a TikTok dance while they give you liposuction. Can you imagine any other field of medicine doing this? So the bill for your heart surgery is going to be $100,000, but we can knock 20% off if, you let us use your before and after pics for our socials. We'll give it a tasteful title, something like Sexy Mom of 3 Ready for Action Again, and, we'll tastefully pixelate your nipples. The only thing that comes close are the appalling chiropractic channels that have converted the therapist-patient relationship into entertainment and perform these ridiculous manipulations on camera, often with debased and cynical attempts to get clicks rather than actually help anybody. But sorry, I did say field of medicine, and whatever this chiro crack circus is, it's not medicine. But while one can expect that kind of behavior from alternative medicine quacks, these plastic surgeons are proper doctors with medical degrees and licenses. And this kind of behavior from qualified medical professionals just strikes me as completely unprofessional and inappropriate. I mean, there's a reason that, in that NFT scam I made a video about last year, there's a reason the most represented specialty was Instagram and TikTok cosmetic surgeons. And by the way, now that even the last believers have finally realized that NFTs were the biggest scam since Samuel Hahnemann decided to dilute something so much that none of it was left and then sell it as homeopathic medicine, I noticed that those docs are all back at making content, collabing with other doctors on social media, getting invited onto podcasts. Grifters never pay. So hopefully, one day, I will make that video about this whole world and investigate how murky it gets.
Anyone with a basic medical degree can call themselves a cosmetic surgeon.
Theatres are used as performance spaces.
I never really knew she could dance like this. She make a man want to speak Spanish.
But then again, maybe I'm the geriatric millennial dinosaur that's not moving with the times. I mean, I find doctors and nurses doing dances on TikTok cringe-inducing at the best of times, but many of them are just having some harmless fun. Plenty are communicating science effectively to a new audience. So it's always good to have an introspective moment to make sure that you haven't become Principal Skinner. And maybe that's how I need to think about my attitude to body modification. I'm always shocked at how normalized it has become now, but perhaps I am the one in need of a mental makeover. Tattoos moved from some deeply symbolic undertaking to something you might get done on a Friday night lash with absolutely no forethought, and I'm not judging that at all. I always thought I would have got a tattoo by now, but I've never been able to decide on what to get. I probably will regret this, but hit me with your suggestions. But likewise, say nose jobs and butt lifts. They're now treated in a similar manner to getting your eyebrows threaded or a bikini wax. With the rapid rise of something called aesthetic medicine, a field of body-modifying treatment where most practitioners aren't even plastic surgeons, and some of the procedures are not always permanent, although of course not without risk, people are viewing changing their appearance, often with quite invasive means, akin to getting a facial or going to a tanning salon. Fueling this explosion, just as a side note, are more and more medical professionals looking for alternate careers, as morale hits rock bottom in health services following the pandemic all around the world. So we're only going to see this trend of cosmetic procedures as commodities increase. And, I'll be honest, I've been tempted. These lines on my forehead are starting to bother me. Maybe I'll ask somebody to fill my crease. No one's going to take that line out of context, are they? And how can I say that one type of modification is acceptable or normal, but another isn't? Where does one draw the line? There's also an interesting gender element to all of this, as traditionally women have changed their appearance throughout history much more than men, from foot binding to wearing makeup. And of course, most cosmetic surgery customers for the last 50 years have been women. But men are getting in on the act much more commonly now. I mean, I'm not deleting that Turkish hair transplant email, you never know. Steroid therapy has never been more accessible and popular, but men are also getting things like their jaws and their brows made more masculine with surgery. And of course, increasing your height is perhaps the feature most associated with being masculine that you could want to accentuate. So could one, in effect, refer to this as gender-affirming surgery? Now, I'm not just saying that to be edgy. Short stature dysphoria or height dysphoria is recognized, akin to gender dysphoria, both of which are characterized by deep dissatisfaction with aspects of your body. I'm not suggesting they're equivalent, but it is interesting to observe the difference in how culture approaches these two topics. I noted with interest that some of the surgeons that offer leg lengthening surgery also offer leg shortening surgery for trans women. If we classify some operations as gender-affirming and hence life-saving, but others as simply for vanity reasons, is that actually an artificial demarcation? It's easy to pretend that breast augmentations are just done by narcissistic wannabe influencers, but a female friend of mine who was essentially sort of completely flat-chested said she never felt like a woman until she underwent breast implants. So what constitutes gender-affirming surgery? Does it always have to be in the context of moving from cis to trans? How about from cis to more cis? And talking of gender, one of these plastic surgery accounts that I follow recently threw up an operation that I'd never even heard of before, which is kind of the spiritual opposite of leg lengthening surgery. It's called clavicle reduction surgery, where they chop a chunk out of your collarbone to feminize the shoulders, obviously marketed at trans women. Now, I've got really quite narrow shoulders, and had my life gone down a different path, that would have been ample fuel for an alternate timeline incel version of me to rage against Mother Nature for denying me that classic Chad broad-shouldered V-shape. Indeed, once I found a whole Reddit discussion with all of these guys bitching about their clavicle length, something I can honestly say I had never even considered even being an observable feature on which to comment. I couldn't help but laugh that people transitioning from male to female want apparently my gammy neck and narrow clavicles, and people transitioning in the opposite direction are envious of my Indian carpet, hirsute chest, and dense facial hair. See, I don't choose from the set menu, I go for an eclectic a la carte selection. The Peerless ContraPoints often talks about the preoccupation we can have with millimeters of bone, and did a phenomenal video several years ago now about body modification surgery that is, as always, worth a watch. So how can we decide what cosmetic procedures should be done? Should all surgeries be fair game if the person that requested them reports that they were to improve their well-being? Are they always the best judge? What is the role of the medical profession here, to be passive facilitators or to gatekeep? It is clear that some cosmetic surgeries should never have been done. I remember even as a kid feeling anger at Michael Jackson's doctors for agreeing to do so many operations on him. I mean, in the end, my anger ended up directed at my own profession because, of course, it was a cardiologist that killed him. But, he clearly had loads of problems, much of which was tied up in his self-image, and I don't think a lot of those surgeons did him any favours. So I was glad to see that some of the British surgeons that I'd looked into that offer leg lengthening surgery require psychological assessment first, and I think this should be the norm. I told you I'd gone on a bit of a journey while researching this. While my first reaction when I heard of this operation was confusion or maybe even laughter, the more I've thought about it, the more I have sympathized with the guys going under the knife in order to get a leg up in the world. I'm lucky enough that I don't feel insecure about my height, but I'd probably feel differently if I was 10 centimeters shorter. And even at my current height, if you offered to slip me a few painless inches, I'd say yes. Forget it. If there was some way to reap the results without the risk, I think most people would want to be taller. If anything, one could argue that the reasoning to increase height is more persuasive than a lot of other cosmetic features because of how differently short people are treated in society. And yet, the whole thing still makes me feel very uneasy. It is possible to understand why people undergo any of the wide array of cosmetic procedures that are commercially available, while also being deeply uncomfortable about how they are marketed like regular purchases, that they take advantage of people who might be unrealistic about how a surgical procedure can impact their lives. It's possible that changing your appearance can solve all of your problems, but it's very unlikely. And of course, there are risks involved with all of these things, and leg lengthening might be one of the riskiest of the lot. The more I've researched it and read stories of often quite extreme complications, the more I struggle to be able to justify it. I'm struck by just how many orthopedic surgeons in the articles that I've read are really not keen on the procedure, and some even go so far as to accuse those who offer it of chasing the cosmetic surgery cash. If one of my patients suffers a complication, it was at least in pursuit of life-saving surgery. Although I think the people who undergo this operation might describe it as life-changing surgery, so who am I to tell people what their priorities should be? Secondly, coming at this as a doctor, cosmetic surgery has always been a bit of a funny one. We go to medical school to learn how to prevent and treat disease, but cosmetic surgery patients are generally healthy. Of course, you could argue that cosmetic surgery can treat mental illness, helping people feel more comfortable in their bodies, but I don't think we should be suggesting that the majority of people undergoing procedures like this are doing it for a pathological mental state. Most are simply doing it to feel better about themselves, which is an entirely valid reason to do something, but let's not over-medicalize normal emotions. Ultimately, these patients are well, which makes them different to the patients that most other doctors treat. And while we can all point to examples of cosmetic surgery that should never have been done, in the most part, I do believe that people can derive huge benefits from cosmetic procedures, and the doctors are helping people in a real way. It's just desperately sad that people feel that they need to do this. The article by Chris Gayamali that started this whole journey for me said, "It's nothing short of a miracle that we can change something in the human body that was once unchangeable. A short king can transform himself into just a king, as long as he's willing to subject himself to the kind of horrifying, life-altering injury traditionally associated with getting hit by a bus. It's as if we're playing God to appear slightly more bonable on Tinder. On some level, it's grotesque. It's also a medical wonder. I wonder what the future holds. What surgeries will be available in a decade or so? If we can already do such complex things, will we soon be able to convincingly change our race? Will we create working reproductive organs for those transitioning? Or is the future cyberpunk, sci-fi, cyborg body augmentation? Or will things go fully far out and do what I've been asking for years, an extra set of arms so I can be Goro from Mortal Kombat? So listen, if you're a short person out there feeling unhappy with your height, I'm not sure that there's much I can say that you won't have already heard. But my friends tell me that they value my advice, which is strange because my advice normally consists of who gives a f*** what anybody else thinks, which I know is easier said than done for a lot of people. I can't change society. It's unequal and it's unfair. Life is easier if you're tall, but it's also easier if you're able-bodied, attractive, the right colour, born rich, intelligent, the right sex. These are all things that none of us can control, just like height. So try not to place more importance on one aspect than it deserves. And remember, we're living in the online age. On the internet, nobody knows if you're a short mofo, so let's consider some of our greatest heroes. Vsauce's Michael Stevens, Michael Reeves, and Moist Critical himself, Charlie. These legends, or as I like to call them, YouTube shorts, are true role models for young guys. I mean that. Now, I'm not in their league, but I also stand before you, rising 169.5 proud centimeters from the ground to say, don't feel as though you need to go through major surgery to feel better about yourself. But if you do think it's for you, and you've thought about it carefully and researched it, and you've got a ton of money to spend, please speak to a doctor in real life rather than trusting the internet. If you do go for it, best of luck. You know, break a leg. This was a bit of a different video for me, but I hope you found it interesting or entertaining, especially my fellow short kings and queens, jacks and jokers. Remember, if you ever need a heart transplant, you have a much better chance of finding a match than a tall person. That's true. So there is that. That and economy class seats being bearable, but that's it. That's the whole list. I found making this video quite cathartic, actually, and quite enlightening. And while I might be happy with my lot, I was thinking a lot about my younger son when making this, who has appeared on the channel as a wee baby. He looks like he's going to be a shorty, like his mum and dad, and I don't want him thinking one day that he needs to break his legs in order to have self-confidence. I don't want him becoming bitter like those guys I found on Reddit. So I'll teach him what worked well for me, bamboozling everybody with jokes so bad that they actually took pity on me.
Your grandmother was a hoe.
And being able to eat unholy amounts of food, a true alpha move that terrifies larger animals into submission. Plus, while he might be short, he's very good looking. And yes, I can preempt your comment here. I agree, he didn't inherit that from me. But I've done what any parent, responsible parent, planning a career for a short, handsome guy would do. I've signed him up in advance for the Church of Scientology. When I started this channel, I never realised that my facial hair would eclipse my popularity on my own channel, usurped by my own beard. If I search the YouTube comments for beard, there are thousands of pagonophiles. And many of those comments were calling for something which has now happened. Yes, the guild of manly facial hair pulled some strings and scratched some backs and fiddled with some knobs, and the shaving companies got in touch in force. Yes, Big Razor was knocking at my door, so I wanted to do this properly because I've never done a sponsorship like this before. I'm probably not going to do one like it again. And this year I've been trying lots of different razors, and the one that I've been using for the last few months, and hence the only one I wanted to recommend to you, is the one from Henson Shaving. And that's why they're sponsoring this video. It's called the AL13, which is coincidentally also the name of Elon Musk's youngest child. But first, let me give you a little insight into my problem. Some years ago, I decided to get a luxury cutthroat razor, Turkish barber shave, hot towel, fireballs in the ears, you know, the whole works. So the guy lathers me up and I lie back and he starts shaving, but he keeps making these annoyed grunting noises, and I figured, you know, maybe that's just his style, but it soon becomes apparent that something's not right and he's struggling. Eventually he just sits me up and says, nope, nope, nope. I look in the mirror and the white towel that was around my neck has gone red with my blood. My face is only half shaved, bleeding like crazy. I said, what the hell is this? And he said, in my whole career, I have never met anyone with hair this hard and skin this soft. It's impossible. What a weird claim to fame. Sweeney Todd, the cheeky bugger, still even tried to charge me. So believe me, if I like a razor, then it means it can handle some heavy duty stuff, because it is said after all that a beard hair is as hard to cut as a copper wire of the same thickness, or maybe, in my case, pure vibranium. But your skin is soft, so Henson figured out that by ensuring the blade doesn't flex or judder as it cuts, it can slice through even my alpha testosterone twigs, but leave my sensitive, silky beta cuck skin unscathed. And they do this by engineering their razor to aerospace standards, and I'm not even saying that as hyperbole. Their CNC machines are calibrated that exactly because Henson quite literally built parts that are in the ISS and on the surface of Mars in one of the rovers right now. And as they are completely plastic free, as are the blades, which of course can be recycled, and the razor will last you a lifetime, they are far more sustainable, unlike disposable razors. I didn't find the beard life found me, and you know why? Not because I hanker after life as a hipster, it's because I'm incredibly lazy and I don't like subjecting my face to all that. And all the wonderful looks that you're seeing now were created so much more easily than when I've done this in previous videos in the past with my old razor, because that used to keep getting clogged. Everyone in the house knew that I was shaving because I'd be banging the razor on the basin so much to get the hair out. And that's the thing with multi-bladed razors. The first one cuts, the second blade just traps hair, and the third one just makes it cost more. And of course, cost is one of the big attractions here, because I dread to think how much I've spent on expensive cartridges for razors over the years, but here you buy a quality item just once and cheaper blades are your only ongoing expense. No expensive cartridges that last a single shave and no subscriptions either, but you don't have to pay anything for blades because you'll get 100 free if you sign up via my link below. So if you want a beautifully precision engineered shaving tool, go to hensonshaving.com/medlife, get 100 blades free when you buy a razor. Just put both in your cart to get the offer. You get the only razor you'll ever need, and you also support this channel. Visit the link on screen now or in the description box below. I don't know how I became this guy that messes around with his facial hair on the internet. It isn't really what I set out to do. It's very strange and quite unexpected, but you know, I post videos so rarely these days that I've kind of come to quite like it. And if you prefer me with the beard, don't worry, you know, it will make another appearance. After all, it doesn't take that long to come back. See you next time. What about some beard ASMR?